together.
Switch gears and talk about public access and getting people involved at City Hall. Clem, you said in your platform that you would make sure that anybody who called City Hall during business hours is answered by a live person. I've called City Hall a few times. I'm wondering how you get that done.
Well, I think you have to get a dedicated line, and you have to have enough people on board to make that happen. I don't know that we're going to hire a bunch of people. I don't think we need to hire a bunch of people. We way underutilize volunteers in this city, and I know that we could man enough phones to get a live call. Now, some people don't mind voicemail. I mean, you know, I'm used to it, so as long as I get to the right department, I'm pretty happy. I hear the person's voice, I leave the message. But you know, a lot of people, when they have concerns, they want to hear a live person, and what we need is a place for them to call where they can get a live person who can then listen to them and then direct them to wherever they need to go. It's a very simple thing, I think, really, and I don't think it's going to be an expensive thing at all. But I think it's something that people should have if they want it. And then if they're happy to maneuver through, you know, voicemail, then, you know, and a lot of the world is, or they email, then that's fine. But there are a lot of people who still just need the comfort of a live call, and I think that that's something, it's kind of a test. If we can't do that, maybe we shouldn't be trying to do anything any more complicated.
And how do you get people more involved in City Hall? And why are people involved now, do you think?
No, I don't think they're involved now because I think they feel they've been left out of the process. They've been left out of the decision making. They've not been asked their opinions necessarily. I think you get people involved by seeking their advice, seeking their information, putting them on commissions and putting them on task forces that deal with the nitty-gritty problems that we face, making them feel like they're a part of the city and actually listening to them when they call you and tell you about situations that occur. And I believe, too, we should have live voices at the end of the phone. As a business person, I just abhor companies that have, you know, and it's mostly the large corporations that have voicemail and they reroute people 5 different places and you never get where you want and you never get to the person you want. So, you know, I certainly support that concept, but that's a very simple kind of thing in terms of people having access. I think we need to be far more welcoming in terms of the public input. It bothers me that the council agendas don't allow for any public input except during a very short time at the very beginning, that we don't have enough opportunities for the public to speak on issues that come before the council that they really should be speaking on, whether it's a major development here or whether it's an initiative here. I think we miss out on not hearing what the public has to say. Not that everything should be opened up, because there are many very routine things, but I think when you have a big issue that's coming before the council, other than a public hearing that is, I think it's important that you allow the public to have some input into that or comment on it at the time it's being heard by the city council. It just seems to me that we've shut out the public in many ways, and that makes them feel totally disconnected to City Hall and their representatives.
Do you feel that way?
No, I don't think we've shut anybody out. I think we can do a better job. I think one of the mechanisms that the new council would use if I'm elected is the study session. We don't study a lot of things in public view. And not that you have to, you can read, you know, in private. You don't need people looking over your shoulder. But I know that when we were on the school board, and particularly the first time that I was president, we really opened up and started using more study sessions. And it was kind of a hybrid. We started by, you know, hearing what the public had to say on things, and then when we got finished with letting the public air its point of view, we closed that down, and then the policymakers got to have a crack at it, but not just, you know, a sterile give and take between staff, more of a discussion format. People who were there actually got to see what we were considering, got to kind of, you know, see our thought processes in front of them. And I thought it was very helpful. In fact, it was during that era that I felt that the school district started to regain the trust of the people in SUSD, because they didn't think we were making a bunch of decisions in, you know, behind closed doors. I think that's pretty effective. The other thing that we need to do is we need to haul the directors out into the public, you know, once a quarter or more, and, you know, pick a spot and invite people to come in and visit with us in kind of a general forum, and then in a specific services type of a thing. I think our directors are very isolated from the public and need to visit with folks the way that the elected representatives do. We visit with folks on the phone. They call us and they say, hey, I've got a problem and here it is. And we either show up at their business or at their home or with their neighbors or however that's going to go. I don't see that with all of the directors, and I think that they would be amazed at what they would learn if they would just get out into the public and do that.
You also said in the platform, while I spoke to you, if this is, you said you'd offer the press an office at City Hall. You'd hold weekly press conferences, and once a month you would have a day where people could come without an appointment to meet with the mayor. That's the case?
I think those are very simple things, and yes.
What do you think, Melissa?
Oh, I think that's fine. I mean, I had already figured out that at least one day a month I'd be in my office at the Balloonery and allow the average person to walk in the door without going through a third degree and going through, security measures to get in to see me. I think it's critical that we be accessible and available to the public. And so, I have no problem with any of that. One of the things, if I might follow up a bit on this whole study session thing, I think study sessions obviously are important. I would like to see them televised. I would like to see them actually out there where people who can't make it at 7:30 in the morning could view what's happening. Right now, within the current city council agenda format, so many things are on consent agenda. They just happen and they're approved routinely without a report to the citizens. My experience is we really need to be educating the public more about what we're doing, and some of those items that are routinely approved on consent really should be pulled out and explanations given to the public about what's happening and how it's being projected, so they understand. That's all part of the public education process that hasn't really been happening very much lately. And then I'd like to speak to the idea of having study sessions where the public speaks first and then the policymakers talk. I think it should be reversed. I think that all the discussion, the reports, what have you, from city staff, from the policymakers should happen, and then the public should be allowed to ask questions, make comments after they've heard all the information, because frankly, you don't know until you've heard the whole presentation what questions might arise, and it just seems to me that why have the public say something first if they don't know what is even being fully presented?
You talked about security at City Hall. Do you think that those security gates should come down and that people should be able to walk around where the offices are on the second floor, knock on the mayor's office?
I think there's a compromise. I think that door is a barrier, much like the gates around Weber Point are barriers. I think that gives the wrong impression of the second floor. Now, should someone be there, a secretary at a desk? Yes, absolutely. There should be someone there to help direct people into the second floor offices. But, it's like you have to have a pass key to get into the second floor of City Hall. Now, as a council member, we never had to go through that. We were able to walk in. We rarely had problems with, quote, undesirables coming into the second floor. People usually got screened well before they got there, either downstairs or above. So I just think it's a deterrent. It's not an open environment. It's not a welcoming City Hall, at least on the second floor. Downstairs, people can walk into the city clerk, the fire department, the billiard, everybody else. They can just walk into an office and be helped. But the question is, why is everybody so important on the second floor of City Hall that they have to be locked down?
Well, they can actually only walk into counters on the first floor. They can't just walk into the office.
True,
spaces.
they walk to counters. That's right.
But unless at some point the rhetoric gets extreme. It's a business office building and people are doing work, and so I don't think you want anybody just kind of wandering around. I'm not that hung up on the door one way or the other. It's there, and probably if you have a reason to go through it, you have a reason to go through it. I think one of the ways you soften up City Hall is by doing what I said, and it's letting people come in to visit with the mayor, and breaking down some of those barriers and letting them come in. Again, they're not going to go snooping around in offices, but they're going to get to come back and maybe the mayor moves his desk out to the foyer to break down a barrier, or maybe we make it easier for him to get back to that corner office. I'm not quite sure how it's all going to work, but people do work in a business, and you go into most businesses, there's some sort of a way to keep people in a certain place, and unless they have a legitimate reason for being somewhere else. I don't, you know.
Let's move on. And what do you give up because of the budget crisis? $23.5 million. What had you wanted to do that you don't do now, or at least for a couple of years?
What do you give up? Well, that's an excellent question, and my belief is that you can do a whole lot with what you already have, and if too much is being cut, you're going to have to maybe minimize some of the bodies on the street or in the office buildings, some of the people who are actually providing service. But I would say you compensate for that by developing partnerships with other agencies, whether it's the county, the school districts, nonprofits, where you can maximize your joint resources to work on the problems that we all have. So I don't want to say you give up anything. I think you figure out a way to make things happen given the resources that you have, bringing the community in and the other community partners that we have so that they buy into this. I believe firmly that the business community in Stockton needs to step up to the plate, and particularly work within the schools to develop programs, to adopt a school, to help with the truancy piece, with the mentoring piece, with those kinds of things that ultimately, hopefully sooner rather than later, reduce our crime rate. So I think you just don't say give up, you say how do we do as much, if not more, with what we have and we have to work with. That's all you can do at this time.
It's the same questions to you.
Oh, is it? Okay, well.
And if you did want to engage each other,
Well, we're going to have to give up $23 million worth of expenditures, and that will probably equate to giving something up. I think that we're going to need to make some cuts in administration and support. I think that we're going to, from there, we're going to have to look really hard at all of the services that the city performs. And we're going to have to decide, tough things like, do we keep the libraries open the same number of days as we always have? Or do we, fiddle with the hours? Now, I've said libraries, so all the library people are going to holler at me. Well, guess what? Somebody's going to holler at me before this is all over because some things are going to get cut. A couple of things that we're not looking at, and it's frustrating. I think that there are savings in the health benefits program, savings to the city without reducing the health benefits to the employee. Actually, I think employees could get more flexibility, more money in their pocket if we would have a good hard look at the benefits program. And I have been saying that for some time on the council. The other thing is that we need to look at services in terms of whether or not it is really, particularly under this kind of economic climate, appropriate for the city to even be attempting to provide services. There are undoubtedly services that the city provides that could more efficiently and more economically be provided in the private sector. And while we may not want to raise all of those businesses in the next moment, we probably should have some sort of a strategy for getting there. So there will be cuts, real things. It won't just be doing more with less or less with more, or whatever you want to say. It really is going to be about cutting things.
I think it's important, too, that we pay attention to what our employees are saying about cuts that they could stomach and stand in. There have been several documents produced by the city, employee cost savings suggestions. It is a whole litany of very, very interesting suggestions that I think we should all examine collectively and determine which ones could actually be implemented. And it's low-hanging fruit. It's the kinds of things that employees see in their daily work life. And I think that's who you talk to figure out what the low-hanging fruit is. And there's probably 150 suggestions that the employees have come up with, that everything from working 4 10-hour days a week to being closed on Fridays to save energy costs, to looking at benefit reductions, to shopping at Costco and Walmart for things rather than Office Depot, to a variety of what seems like minuscule things, but in reality, the pennies and the dollars all add up, and in the end, it makes a difference, and people who are on the front line kind of know whether they need to have the city provide them coffee or not, or whether the city should be funding lunches and dinners and travel and things like that.
What are some of those suggestions that you think are good ideas?
Well, I think one of them is offer voluntary furlough to let people work a voluntary furlough. They work reduced hours for reduced pay. Again, work 80 hours in 9 days, closing every other Friday to save on overhead. Do away with take-home vehicles. Again, work 4-day work weeks with 10-hour days. Provide police department community service officers with specific daily purposes. Apparently, they don't have specific daily purposes. Then there are things that, I mean, those make sense.
What do you think about those, Clint?
I think there are a lot of good ideas in there, and it's a lot of them are under consideration. But it isn't going to extract us from the fact that when the predominance of your budget is in salary and benefits, you're not going to solve a $23 million program with too many of these little items. It's that simple. I don't want to seem callous. I keep up with that list, and I fire off the ones that I think somebody really ought to, or sometimes I say, are we really doing that? Because candidly, I'm interested if we are in some of those cases. But ultimately, this is going to come down to dealing with jobs and benefits.
Yeah.
That's where the savings and the revenues and the expenditures all live.
You talked about administration cuts earlier. Do you think that City Hall is administration heavy?
What was the question?
Do you think that City Hall is admin heavy? Do you think there are too many upper level administrators?
Yes.
Yeah, I think the one thing I was sorry to see in the reorganization was a fourth kind of a deputy city manager. That wasn't really the direction that I thought that we should head. I think that you need to, the work happens where it happens, and certainly you have to have leadership, and you have to have good folks leading those departments. But you can often, and we found this with the school district, because we didn't cut teachers. We tried not to cut too many classified folks, but we certainly cut a lot of administrators. Because if you can live without them, it makes things a little harder work for the remaining administrators. But I think you just need to have a good hard look at that. I'm very much in favor of that.
Yeah, City Hall is definitely top-heavy, and I did not support the addition of 2 deputy city managers. I was concerned that the 2 existing ones were not even doing their jobs. So to add 2 more just compounded the problem.
Would you be rid of all 3 of them?
I'm not going to say I'm going to get rid of anyone. I'm going to reevaluate what they're actually doing and find out, because not being in City Hall at the moment and day to day in terms of what they're doing, I want to see what they're doing and before I make that decision, just like with the city manager. But I think they need to be able to justify their existence to me, and why we don't have an assistant city manager, someone who in fact would take over when the city manager wasn't there, who is an expert in financial stuff. I think, not that I would add that as a position, but I think it needs to be reorganized, frankly. And I did not approve of the reorganization that took place. Because in the end, 2 people moved up from the ranks, and then those positions had to be backfilled. So, you've got, $350,000 in salaries right there in 2 positions minimum. Probably more like $400,000 in 2 positions. That would go a long way.
Yeah, they didn't backfill the positions that the directors moved out of, just to be clear.